This week, the U.S. economic growth rate for the third quarter of this year was released, and it showed that the economy grew at 5.2% versus the first estimate of 4.9%. By way of reference, the U.S. economy usually grows about 2% per year. So in the past quarter, we had growth rates that were more than double what they usually are. If you look at the detail of the GDP report, most of the growth was due to increases in consumer spending, business inventory investment, residential investment, and government spending. I would say that consumerism and some persistence in home building in particular have buoyed the U.S. economy for much of the post-pandemic recovery period. If things are so rosy, why are so many economists still calling for a mild recession or at least slowdown in growth for 2024? I've mentioned before that the U.S. savings rate has fallen to the very low level of 3.4% versus 7% pre-pandemic. Yet, many households continue to spend, which is driving up credit card usage and delinquency rates. This is also true for auto loans. All this implies the hurrah of consumer spending is likely to slow in 2024, after all the Christmas shopping, that is. But there is a nuance in the latest GDP revisions that I think is worth sharing with you. Domestic income, which is largely comprised of wages and salaries, has been declining in the U.S. over the past 4 quarters. Typically, as GDP moves, so does domestic income, specifically because household income drives consumer buying power. But as the graph shows, that is not the case in this cycle, with real income at negative 0.2% year over year and real GDP economic growth a positive 3% year over year. And this is all because of inflation. The quote, real measures incorporate inflation, and despite wage increases across virtually all industries over the past 3 years, consumers are not ahead. As the next graph shows, if we compare January 2019 prices on transportation, food, and housing to prices this fall, all categories are up between 25 and 35%. The dotted lines show you how Denver prices are even higher. Even though we are all painfully aware of inflation, the pandemic-induced wage increases and strength of the labor market have perhaps created the perception that the U.S. consumer is better off than he or she actually is. And this has fueled consumerism. This is much of the reason that economists like me are forecasting a contraction in consumer spending and economic growth in the upcoming year.